this is Caitlin, your host of the NoSleep4Dramas Podcast, where we get no sleep and survive on coffee to watch just one more episode at night. Welcome to the first solo recording of NoSleep4Dramas Podcast. This is my first solo review of a drama, my first solo review episode. And what drama did I choose to do my first review of this podcast as a whole? That is the recently ended / premiered, because it premiered and ended on the same day, the Korean drama Death's Game. Yes. I mean, I had to do it. Like, it was something else. It was special. And I think I had a lot to say, and there's a lot to dissect. And I just needed to do this as my first review. Coming out when I launched this podcast, it's like just 2024 is starting out good, people, if that gives you any idea of how much praise I have for this Korean drama, because it's okay. I'm gonna get into it because it was special. It was absolutely special, and it needs to be talked about. And just that's what I need. That's why I chose to do it as my first episode. Okay, so how is this going to work? I'm going to introduce the drama in case you don't know about Death's Game, where to find it, who the cast was, synopsis, that type of thing. Then I'm going to do my overall review. What did I think about it? Very not into detail review, just an overview of it. And then in case you haven't watched this drama, I'll give you okay, we're moving into spoilers territory warning, and then we're going to really dive deep into this Korean drama because I have a lot to analyze and a lot to dissect. Basically, I'm going to kind of use this review as me trying to fully understand what I just witnessed and watched in this Korean drama. So, if you did not know what Death's Game is on Amazon Prime. It was released in 2 parts. The first part was 4 episodes released December 15th of 2023. And then the second part was released a couple weeks later in January 5th, 2024, the last 4 episodes. So I'm considering this a 2024 drama, because how I do my reviews is if I finish a drama in the year, so in 2024, that is a 2024 drama. Same with my reviews, same with my lists of like my faves of that year or something. So just so you know, that's how I do things. If you've been a reader of my blog, you know that's how I've been doing things. So that won't be changing. So Death's Game's cast. We have So In-guk, who honestly I don't think has done a drama in a while. Like, I guess 2022 was his last drama before Death's Game, which that was Cafe Manamdang. I think that's how you pronounce it. But you might know him from Doom at Your Service. You might know him from Shopping King Louie, which was 2016. You might know him from Reply 1994. Just a bunch of dramas. He's pretty well known. And then you have Park So-dam. Park So-dam. You obviously would know her from Parasite, Record of Youth, Cinderella and the Four Knights, just to name a couple. Some of the other main cast, you have Go Yoo-jung, who you know from Alchemy of Souls, Sweet Home, Law School. That's just to name a few. And then you have the woman who plays So In-guk's mother, Kim Mi-kyung. I mean, she's the mother in everything. I mean, she was the Ajuma in Healer. We know her from, I don't know, there's so many dramas. Forecasting Love and Weather. She Would Never Know. That was a guest role, though. It's Okay to Not Be Okay. Like, just a ton. Like, she's just everywhere, and we love her for it. Someone also that's prominent that comes up is Kim Ji-hoon, which he's been doing a lot recently, like Money Heist, Flower of Evil. You know him from Flower of Evil. Bad Thief, Good Thief. Had a guest role, I think, in Celebrity. So Love to Hate You, of course. He's been doing a lot recently. So those are like the main people, pretty much, in some capacity or other. The rest are kind of like guest roles and cameos, which we'll talk about soon enough. Along with introducing this drama, we obviously will go over the synopsis. So you have So and Gook, and just trigger warning right now if you are considering watching this drama and you have no idea what it's about or whatever, it will talk about suicide. So the main big story point is suicide. So if that's not your thing, do not go and watch this drama. You have some blood, you have some gore, it's violent. So trigger warning for violence and suicide. That's pretty much the big warnings here. So and Gook's character, he's been unemployed for forever. He has a girlfriend who basically he decides to like break up with her and let her go so she could like enjoy the life that he wanted to give her. He also thought that she had been like going out on blind dates and stuff. Lost his entire life savings. Like he's really down in the dumps, like cannot escape all of this. And so he decides to take his own life. And because of his attitude towards death and dying and just deciding to do this because he's hit a low point in his life, Death, played by Park So-dam, decides to punish him, in her words, by having him experience death over and over and over again by living out these 12 lives that she's chosen for him. Technically 13 lives if you count them up. And the catch, I guess, is like if he can escape death in one of these bodies, he can continue living their life, right? So his goal is to beat her, and beat her at her own game, and basically try and live as one of these people. And so that's pretty much the synopsis. I don't want to give anything more because obviously spoilers and everything. So my overview, like review of this, right? My overall review. I absolutely loved it. 10 out of 10. I don't give 10 out of 10 reviews often at all. I try to be as very objective as possible and try to be fair with my reviews. This 10 out of 10. I absolutely loved it. I love, like, so little background. I had no idea what this was going into it, right? Like, other than like the mini synopsis I read and the fact that I knew like the cast and I could see there were going to be a ton of cameos, like this cast is stacked. I didn't really know what I was getting into because it's based off a webtoon and I have not read the webtoon. So I knew just purely based off of what I saw on MDL and the trailers, and that's pretty much it. So I didn't know any of the spoilers for story. I didn't know where the plot was going to go. I didn't even know like the structure of the drama, nothing at all. And Death's Game blew me away. Like the writing was just immaculate, and the twists and the turns and everything was just so well put together and so well done. And you just 2024 started out really good. Like, this was my first drama I completed in 2024, and let me tell you, it was a pleasure watching it. Granted, that's weird. I know that's weird to say when I just described like it's about suicide and violence and stuff, but it was such a pleasure watching it. And I can't even talk enough about the acting and the story and the production and the OSTs, and it's just such a good drama. And I was so surprised because it's not like I wasn't expecting it to be a good drama. I just wasn't expecting it to be as good as it was. And there's a high standard for 2024 if you start out like this. Like, there's a high standard or high expectation, I guess, if you start out 2024 with this type of Korean drama. So, I really have nothing bad to say about it. I really don't, which is why I want to dive into the spoilers part of this review and like just really dig deep into what I thought about it and my journey with this drama, which I'll explain in the spoiler section, because I had a journey, especially knowing or not knowing where this plot was going to go. And for people who follow me on the socials, especially Instagram, you will know what I mean. Okay, so this is your spoiler warning. I'm going to be moving into spoiler territory. I'm going to be going into depth about the story, the drama, the acting, the actors. So, spoilers galore. And just a quick thing again, spoilers beyond this point. Okay, so now that we got that out of the way, I decided I'm going to break this down into 2 parts, maybe 3. But since the drama was released in 2 parts, the first part, first 4 episodes, and the second part, second 4 episodes, I'm going to talk about the first 4 episodes first, and then we'll move into the second half. My opinion, the second half of this drama was actually better than the first. Not saying the first was not good. It's just the second part and second half of this drama, especially with the story blew me away. Like, I couldn't believe what happened with the second part, but we're not there yet. So, first part. So, the first thing I want to mention is like, it's just the main character, right? As we said in my intro, Seong-guk is like just been going through it. He has been working forever in like part-time jobs and everything, hasn't been able to get employed in like a huge company. His girlfriend has been dating him for years and is proud of him, but he can't seem to see that and breaks up with her. He loses his entire savings due to this like Bitcoin scam. Like, he's just his apartment, like he gets kicked out of his apartment because he can't pay rent. Like, he's just at his wit's end. And the series of events you see, you just keep like, he just keeps getting pounded into the ground. And then on top of it, he's going to this interview at Kim Ji-hoon's company. Kim Ji-hoon is like this chaebol. And this guy comes running out of nowhere and gets hit by a car and dies in front of him. Like, he commits suicide in front of him by running in front of a car. And you could tell that affected him a lot, especially going into the interview. That's why he bombed the interview. Like, this one action and this one choice that this person made changed the course of Seongguk's character's entire day, life, everything. And I just wanted to point that out because I'll discuss this later, but like this entire story for a part of it is like a series of choices. And while I was watching this, I kept thinking about choices and I kept thinking, like, how would this make sense? And I'll get more into more detail, but like, how would this particular thing that just happened in the plot make sense if he was alive by the end of this drama, if he got that second chance? How could this possibly work? And I finally came to the conclusion at the end that it was choice. So again, I'll touch back on that later, but I just wanted to point out, like, that was how the drama started. He saw this guy die, and that created a domino effect for his life, and he got to the point where he thought unaliving himself and suicide was the only option. And so we get to Death, and he meets Death, Park So-dam, and she gives him this opportunity of, in her words, punishing him because he has to experience these people's deaths again and again and again. But we all know, I mean, like, it's a classic message, a classic story of like, suicide's not the answer. Look what you're missing. Look what you would have experienced if you stayed alive. Kind of like for example, It's a Wonderful Life. You know, the classic Christmas movie. He sees how he impacted the people's lives when he was made to disappear. And I think this was how I interpreted this message. Is like, it's the same kind of the same thing. Where Seongguk's character experiences these people's lives, and they get more important and more important as the story goes on, and sees the impact of him and his decision to commit suicide affected these people and affected life for people in general, in small ways that you didn't realize would be affected until the story came to that point. And then you're like, wow. Like, that's why I said the writing in this drama was impeccable and great. And like, you really think something isn't connected, and then it is. And then it blew your mind. And that was how I went through this entire drama. So the first reincarnation we get is, we have two that happen like quite fast. Is the first one is, we find out later, Kim Ji-hoon's brother, the other Chaebol brother, played by Siwon, and he dies in a plane crash. Really, like, just out of the gate. Just dies. And the second one too is pretty fast, like Sung-hoon. Seongguk comes back as Sung-hoon and kind of just falls out of the sky and dies. Like, I actually laughed at Sung-hoon's cameo because it was just so obnoxious and so out there, and it just happened. It was happening so quickly, and he just died. The third one was Kim Kan-hoon, who we know from, like, he's a child actor, grew up in front of our eyes, like, has been everything, like, just. So now Seongguk as Kim Kang-hoon is a high schooler, middle schooler, high schooler, and so he has to deal with a bully. And it was quite interesting to see the progression of this story, because this kid was being bullied and he was very meek, and then Seongguk comes into the picture and is like, I'm not gonna take this from you, and basically like just beats everybody up. And at the time, Seongguk's character like doesn't think anything of it. He's like, oh, they'll leave me alone now, whatever. But you kind of see, especially through this storyline, the choices that Seongguk made affected what happened to him in these bodies later on, or later on in that same character's story, because yeah, he couldn't have predicted what had happened, but at the same time, it's like, dude, you were in high school once. Like, you should know that antagonizing a bully will not work out for you, especially how crazy this bully was. um, but it also showcased like a heartbreaking story with like his mother. Like, he goes home and is in Kim Kang-hoon's body, and like he's talking to Kim Kang-hoon's mother and sees his own mother, and you start to realize that he misses her and kind of regrets leaving her, and that's kind of the start of these moments that he realizes that he might have made a mistake, or he didn't think about the whole picture. And I loved how the story slowly put those into perspective for So Eun-guk's character. Um, and I think characters affected him more than others. Like, I think the bullying story with Kim Kang-hoon's character really affected him, because he realized that these people's lives, because the first two lives were so short, like he didn't really have any time to live their life and get to know them, and he really got to know this kid and as him walking around, and got to know his troubles, and got to know school, and got to know the social dynamics of a school that this kid's been living in. And you kind of connected with Kim Kang-hoon's character, even though you knew he was the only the third life, and you knew they had to keep going. And it was interesting to see Song Guk's character like try and figure this out, because at first he thought like this kid was going to do the same thing he did and commit suicide, which I think he was, and then Song Guk made him stop. But then, due to choices, he ended up getting killed by the same bully that he had made fun of and just tore his life apart. And you didn't see that coming. Like, Song Guk's character didn't see it coming. No one did. And I loved the betrayal of choices in this, and it was a constant message you saw throughout the entire drama with any character that you had. Um, and then the next one he reincarnated to was Jang Sung-jo's character, and he was a gangster. And that was a fun episode, because this dude knew how to fight. This dude had to fight for his life. This dude had stolen money and was like trying to get the money back and escape this gangster life. So he like woke up in a truck riding on the highway and had beaten up all these people. And then you got a really cool motorcycle chase and explosions and everything. Like, you really saw the production value and the production budget in this episode. I mean, it was crazy. It was a short-lived life, because I think it only lasted the third episode maybe, but it was a fun one. I had a lot of fun watching Jang Sung-jo's character. But again, it was kind of funny, because all of these lives, like, Death was watching him do this, Park So-dam, and you got the impression that she was putting him in these bodies for a reason, whether to teach So Eun-guk's character a lesson himself, or kind of like make fun of him and because he was like, so at first So Eun-guk was like, I just don't want to do this. I killed myself for a reason. I want to die. And then when he became like competitive and thought he could beat Death, Death was like, I'll show you, and put you in these really weird situations that you would obviously learn a lesson from. So, like, for example, with the high school kid, he thought he had saved his life. He thought like, oh, I stopped him from committing suicide. I'm done. I'm golden. And he just didn't think about And I don't think he should have. I'm not saying he should have been strategic about this, but like it just was death showed him that he couldn't plan for everything and he couldn't expect everything, and death comes out of nowhere. And I think that's one of the thorough messages that this drama teaches you is like live like you're gonna die tomorrow, because you just never know. And yeah, and the same with same with the gangster. Like with every character that Song Gook reincarnated as, he got their memories back. So at first it was comical because he came into this body, had no idea what was going on, didn't have any of their skills, didn't even know their name, nothing. And so there you have some comical scenes, but then eventually he regains everything. And with the gangster, he thought he was going to walk off into the sunset with this girl, and then the girl ends up shooting him and killing him. And he wakes up from this death, and death is laughing at him because she's like, why, how can you not think about that and not think that she's going to kill you for the money? Because he had all this money apparently. So it was I loved the progression of their relationship, Death and Songuk's relationship, because you never really know what Death was throwing him into next, and what lesson he was going to get from that, but also how she was going to react to it. And in later episodes, also how he was going to react to it. Because honestly, this first part, I kept thinking like, God, Songuk's character is so dumb. Like, why wouldn't you think of that? Or why wouldn't you take 5 seconds and like think about this situation? In part 2, it works out better. He gets better in terms of uh, thinking before he speaks or thinking before he does something. But the first part, it was almost comical how this dude went through life. um, and then you have EJ Wook, who he came back as a person in prison. And that was also when it kind of threw me for a loop in terms of all these storylines are connected, because as EJ Wook, he faced his bully again because his bully got arrested for killing the high school student and is now in prison and is a cellmate of EJ Wook's character. And that kind of showed you that all of these people and all these storylines were connected, which is something I was not expecting to happen. I thought it would be very different lives, and they'd have like a certain lesson for a certain life, and they wouldn't be connected whatsoever. And I was not anticipating how entwined these lives were going to be coming. And it was a joy to see the connections and see what the writers did, and to see how the writers connected these lives, and also showed us as audiences, like, you might think somebody passing you on the street is nobody and you would never see him again, but a small action could affect their life, affect your life, do something. That was another message I got from this drama, is like any little action could affect somebody else's life, whether you know it or not. And I loved that as well. The last 2 lives we got in part 1 was after EJ Wook, he gets out of prison and everything. And again, he's like, right now in part 1, he's like obsessed with his money that the gangster stole. And he thinks he's going to get all this money and run away and be golden. And so that's the only thing he's thinking about is money. And EJ Wook, as EJ Wook, he goes and get this money, and he's not killed for the money, but he's killed by his old cellmate, who we all thought was a good guy. which again was another brilliant twist that like you just did not see coming, and I loved that. Like you had tons of twists and everything. And the next life though, he comes back as a baby, and that made me laugh hysterically because Death, like, So Gook's character was like, I'm gonna go back again, just get me back there as soon as possible, and I'm gonna go get this money again. And Death's like, okay, bet. You're gonna go as a baby. And honestly, the baby storyline was so depressing because it was like maybe 6 months old and couldn't do anything, and just it died of neglect, and it just was so sad. And Sohn Gook like was voiceovering this part, and he was like, how could these people be so mean? How could these people be called parents? And it was just like showed you how helpless a kid in this situation could be. And then you get to the final episode of part 1, which was like when everything hits the fan and you're like, what the heck is going on? So he gets reincarnated again as Lee Do-hyun, who is a coffee shop owner. And well, technically not. His brother is, and he's like a model actor, but he's asked by his brother to watch a coffee shop while his brother goes away for vacation or something. And he ends up running into Jisoo, which is Sohn Gook's ex-girlfriend. And at that point, Sohn Gook like misses her and is sorry and wants to reconnect with her as Lee Do-hyun. And they start this really good relationship. Like he finds out some things that the night he broke up with her, she had won this award and was now a writer, and it opened up more things, especially with Jisoo's relationship. Like, what if he had stayed alive, what he would have known and what he would have been living at that time, especially with her relationship. And the end of episode 4 just blew my mind because I was like, what the heck just happened? So the end of episode 4 of part 1, Lee Do-hyun, him as Lee Do-hyun, and Jisoo are walking down the sidewalk, and they all of a sudden get hit by this car. And the entire 4 episodes of the first part, the opening scene was this black and white scene of you see like two people who are dead with sheets over them, and they have like blood and everything, and you realize that they had been hit by something, and you didn't know who these people were, except you saw a high heel and a purse and a picture of Sohn Gook. But again, you had no idea who these people were. And then it happened at the end of episode 4 that these people were Lee Do-hyun and Jisoo. So Jisoo ends up dying at the end of episode 4. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, what the heck just happened? And then who comes out of the car? It is Kim Ji-hoon. And you realize that Kim Ji-hoon, who we've seen periodically through part 1, is going to be a more prominent character in part 2, and is just like changed the tide of this entire drama up to this point. And it was just like the way the writers put everything into full circle with this. And this isn't even the only instance of this. Like they constantly are connecting these threads and going full circle with these things. It's just, it blew my mind. I was just like, what the heck is happening? Especially because I had no idea what was going on. It was all of a sudden you had Kim Ji-hoon come out and smother Lee Do-hyun and kill him, and then also like notice that he had killed Jisoo. And it was just like, oh my god. And then of course Kim Ji-hoon and all his villain glory is like just crazy. Like he's absolutely nuts, and he just gets better with part 2. Like Kim Ji-hoon as a villain, aka Flower of Evil, I love him. I love him as a villain. I love his character when he plays villains. He does villain so well. And so this entire time, this entire part 1, I was thinking, I was like, okay, so he's gone through 8 lives, 7 lives at this point, and like I was like, honestly, with the message that this is going through, it's about suicide. It's about like showing this guy what he's going to miss out on, how he's affected these people that are still living their lives by knowing him. Like, obviously, he's going to have to go back and he's going to somehow be able to relive the life that he took. I just didn't know how he was going to do it. So I kept thinking to myself, like, how the heck, if he goes to the end and he gets this chance to undo his suicide and live again as So Eun-guk's character, is everything going to be erased? Is Jisoo going to die like a month later? Like, is Jisoo even going to talk to Lee Do-hoon in this redo? Like, and again, it came up with the choices thing of like, So Eun-guk made the choice as Lee Do-hoon to strike up a relationship with Jisoo. So if he's not Lee Do-hoon, will Lee Do-hoon ever start a conversation with Jisoo at all? Or will he continue just being a barista in this cafe servicing people? Or will, like, what's another like example? Like, will Jang Sun-jo, will Lee Jae-wook, will he, like, since he went and got this money that So Eun-guk wanted to get, will he be in that same spot in the alley that he got stabbed because he took that time to go get the money? Like, there's so many choices that So Eun-guk's character did with these 7 lives in part 1. And I was just like spiraling, trying to figure out like how this would all fit into place if he came back as himself. And is this actually a parallel world, or are these things actually happening? Are these choices being made by him as them? Will they be erased? Like, that was my thinking after part 1. And it just blew my mind that I was so invested in this. And like, when I have these thoughts and I try to figure this stuff out and I try to like wrap my head around this type of stuff, that shows you I'm invested. That shows you I want to figure out this story. So the fact that I was doing it with this just shows you how much I loved Death's Game. So now we're done with part 1, and I'm going to go to part 2 now. So with part 2, I am honestly surprised I was not spoiled at all. Like, I really was not planning on watching this drama over the weekend. If you guys don't know, it's January 9th right now. So I watched this the weekend the second part came out. I waited for part 1 and watched it when part 2 came out. And I honestly wasn't planning on doing that. I was planning on clearing out my watch list a little bit and then watching it a little later. But then curiosity got the best of me and I clicked play on episode 1 of part 1. But with part 1, with the trailer and everything, I knew some of the cameos. I knew Siwon's character, I knew Sung-hoon, but that was it. Like, that was it. I didn't know that many cameos. In part 2, I knew nothing. I don't know how I did that. I honestly don't know. I have no idea how I did that. But I knew, the only thing I knew is Kim Jae-wook showed up, but I had no idea in what capacity. I didn't know what his character was, nothing. There was just like a drama still that popped up on Twitter. Dude, I enjoyed part 1. I gave it like a 9.5. Part 2 blew me away. Like, part 1 was great. Like, I was talking about how like those threads were woven together and were connecting later on. That was great. Part 2 blew my mind. I was just like, "Oh my god, I cannot believe that this is where it was or this is how it connected." Like I remember sitting there in a certain part, which I'll talk about in a second, of just like, how the hell did somebody come up with this? But at the same time, in that same moment, I was like, this makes total sense on why it's here. So I like part 2, I was explaining with part 1, like, how the heck is this going to end up and work when he goes back as himself? Part 2 was even more confusing. I was so confused watching this. I loved every second of it, but I was so confused watching part 2 because I was like, how is this going to work with everything? So the first persona we got in part 2 was Kim Jae-wook. Oh my god. I think that was like episode 1 part 2 or episode 5, however you want to talk about it. So I love Kim Jae-wook. I have been wanting him to do a villain role ever since I watched Voice season 1. He's amazing as a villain in that role, but he's gone on record that he's never going to do that type of character again because his character in Voice season 1 is so dark and is so violent and it's just so bad. Like him as a serial killer, the actions that his character did was just terrible. And he's gone on record where he's had to like he lost weight playing that role. He was shaking after some of those scenes. He like had to do stuff to get away from the role afterwards. Like this is common knowledge. You can look up interviews and stuff like that. Like the role affected him a lot. So he said that he was never planning on doing that type of role again, which I completely understand. If you react like that to, and I've seen Voice 1, it's terrifying what his character is. He's amazing in it. Still my favorite season of Voice, but I can understand why he would never want to play a character like that. So it blew my mind when he played this character in Death's Game, because Death's Game, he plays a serial killer. And I so wanted him to be a villain and a serial killer again in a role after watching this drama. Like, Kdramas, please cast him as a villain if he's okay with it. And please cast him as like a serial killer. Please. Like, he's so good and so creepy. And then you add Kim Ji-hoon to the mix. So you have these two people who are so good at playing villains together in a scene, in an entire episode, and just going at it. And it was amazing. And it was probably one of my favorite episodes. I know it's really weird that I'm saying that because it's all about two serial killers going at it. But oh my god, it was so good, and I was not anticipating it at all that So Eun-gook's character would come back as Kim Jae-wook. It was, oh my god. But yeah, trigger warning for blood and gore, because was that was hard. And then this is when I started like, oh my god. So you would have these other cameos come up in part 1 where someone went to the police station and saw Oh Jung-se as a cop and like talked to him. And it was like So Eun-gook in, I don't know, as the high school student or something, you know? All of a sudden he's Oh Jung-se as the cop. Like, so they were even brilliant enough to have him be reincarnated as some of the cameos he encountered as other reincarnations in part 1. So I was just like, wow, that's incredible. Like, that, I couldn't even picture that. I thought all these lives would not be connected whatsoever, and he just learned lessons from all of them. So Kim Jae-wook, he kind of died fast. It was only one episode. I was very sad. But the funny thing is he anticipated dying. He planned it, which threw Death off a lot because she didn't anticipate that. So now he's reincarnated as Oh Jung-se, who's a cop who's not a very good cop. Like, he made a promise to his mother that he wasn't going to get hurt, and he's like an older cop. He's like in his 50s or 60s or whatever. And he just doesn't do anything because he wants to keep that promise. And so then you have someone good come in and is like, nope, F that. I'm going to go and get these people. And he's going to use his cop experience to try and get Kim Ji-hoon, because as Kim Jae-wook, he tried to kill Kim Ji-hoon. Emphasis on try, because he planned on not doing that. But now he's reincarnated as a cop. So episode 6 was also one of my favorite episodes ever, because I don't know why this didn't cross my mind, but he made up this elaborate plan in episode 6 to get back at Kim Ji-hoon without killing him. Because Death told him in like episode 3 or 4 of part 1, like, if you kill somebody as a persona, you're going straight to hell. Like, you're not going to get this chance. So he had to come up with a way to get his revenge on Kim Ji-hoon for what he did to Jisoo without killing him. Now, let's go back to the saying of Death. Because Death saying you can't kill somebody, and I swear I think it was like episode 3. That statement threw me off, especially after what happened in episode 4. Because when I thought back on that in part 2, I was like, did Death plan this entire thing out? Like, did she know that Seung-gook's character was gonna kill himself in the beginning and then plan this entire thing about him living these lives and choosing the specific people he was gonna live, and then knowing full well that he was gonna see Jisoo get killed by Kim Ji-hoon, and then told him that he couldn't do revenge? So then it was just like, that was such a me thinking myself into circles trying to figure that out, because I was like, how could she have known everything? How could she have this perfect circle and plan this already knowing that Seung-gook was going to kill himself? How was she gonna know that, especially when we find out more in the rest of part 2? Because like after Oh Jun-se, like, I was just like mind blown for the rest of the story. But Oh Jun-se's character was the longest he lived up to this point. He lived, I want to say, like months. And then he ended up being like saving his partner and dying. And that was like the longest he lived in a body for a while. Like, I want to say it was months. And then he got reincarnated as Kim Won-hae. And Kim Won-hae, again, was a surprise cameo. I did not see it coming whatsoever. And he was a homeless person. And he goes to his own funeral of this cop and ends up like trying to comfort the partner who blames himself and ends up falling down the stairs. And that was the end of Kim Won-hae's life. And again, it was kind of like a funny thing of like, he just accidentally fell down the stairs. Like, he didn't plan it whatsoever. He just did it. And then after Kim Won-hae, I was just like, my mind went into a knot to try and figure this out. Because the next person he reincarnated as was the guy that got hit by the car in the first episode. And the lesson with this story was like, you can change the course of a life or somebody's life with a choice. And Death was like, humans don't see the opportunity if it's in front of their face. And key point with this guy who jumps in front of a car. Like, at this point, Seung-gook wanted to end, like, get to the end, get to the 13th life, like, get done with everything. Because he was he was tired of dying. He was tired of like seeing his mother so sad because he kept running into his mom because his mom was at the funeral home and he like wanted to join Jisoo because in his mind she was dead. Like he was just so over it. And so the next one he told Death after Kim Won-hye, he's like, I'm just gonna go kill myself. Especially after this next one. Um and so she puts him in this body of the person who kind of started this entire story in the first place. And the fact, like, at first I didn't realize who this was. He ends up in this alley and this guy's in a suit just standing in an alley. And I'm like, okay, who the heck is this guy? Like, he's brand new. Am I supposed to recognize him? And then So Eun-guk, as this guy, starts running and then just goes in front of a car. And then you see the entire scene you just got played out, but it's So Eun-guk's personality in this body. And he does the same choices this dude did in the first episode. And not only that, Kim Ji-hoon, which we find out now, is the one who hit him. So you are not only So Eun-guk realized, like, his choice of running into this street not only started his own story, but also started Kim Ji-hoon's story, which again blew my mind because Kim Ji-hoon was like, I accidentally killed somebody and when I first did my first kill, and you never thought it was this dude until it happened in episode 7. It was just like I was like, and then this was a second part where I was trying to wrap my head around the fact of like, okay, if he comes back alive, would this all have happened? Because he technically made the choice to run in front of this car as him, as So Eun-guk, not as the guy who was doing it. So would the guy have run in front of the car if So Eun-guk was not in the body? And would have started this entire story in the first place? Would that even happen? Especially if he was going to come back to life and start his life over. Like, where would they have done that? Where in his story before he committed suicide would they start that? And at this point, I didn't know. You find out at the end, but at this point, I didn't know. So I was like trying to wrap my head around the fact of like, okay, if he wasn't So Eun-guk, he would not have made the choice to run down the alley, wouldn't have made the choice to get in front of the car. So Kim Ji-hoon would never have accidentally killed this guy and might have never become a serial killer. And So Eun-guk might have never watched this guy die, so he never would have bombed the interview, and this guy would still be alive. Like, so many things. And I was just like, this was my reaction of watching this for this first time. And people who watched my Instagram stories saw this me jumping through hoops trying to figure this out. It was just like, I was just so I was confusing myself. I was like, how is this going to work? How is he supposed to come back to life as himself and these lives not be affected? Like, how is it going to be erased? Is it going to be after the fact? Are they still going to die the same way? Especially after episode 7. I was just like, oh my god, like, this is crazy. And then we get to the last episode and the last life. Again, a life I never thought he would live through, but it was his own mother. And again, I was like, oh crap. Oh man, this is going to be a roller coaster. And this life was the longest he lived in, and basically till she was old, and lived out the rest of her life and kind of learned more about his mother, which he never really knew, as her son living, and got to see this new side of her and got to see her mourning and got to see what she had to go through raising him, because he got all her memories as well. And at this point, he didn't want to know. Like, he definitely did not want to know, but of course he had to know. And the last episode, I didn't cry up until the last episode. Last episode, I cried. It was so moving and so heartbreaking. And her story, especially with the loss of her son, was just so sad. And like then Soanguk like you have the voiceover of Soanguk like trying to reconcile with his mother and with his feelings about his mother and with the memories that his mother had. It was just so like so good but so heartbreaking at the same time. Oh my god, I cried. I cried so much this episode. And then she naturally dies, and that was the life. And then, I mean, we all knew it was coming, but I mean, I swear, if they had not put Songuk's character back where he was supposed to go after doing all of this, I don't think it would have made sense. And I don't think, again, I didn't read the webtoon, so I don't know if they made the ending different from the webtoon or not, but it would not have made sense for him to go through 12, 13 lives just to like stay dead. Now, they kind of left it up for interpretation, which I did not mind, because at the very end, and if you don't like left up for interpretation endings, you won't like this, but basically all you see at the end is him picking up a phone that his mother was calling, because when he decided to end his life, he had left his phone with a letter on a roof, and his mother called right when he jumped. And at the end, you see him pick up the phone instead of jump. And then that's it. That's the end. And it's kind of up for your interpretation of like what's going to happen since he decided to live. And I liked that. I liked that choice that the story did. The ending being how it was and how it was open for interpretation is like you don't know. Like that's the thing. Like he restarted his life, and he restarted everything that he had done in those 13 lives. At least this was my interpretation. So like you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know if Kim Ji-hoon's character is going to become a serial killer. You don't know if Jisoo is going to die. You don't know if the gangster is going to steal the money in the first place, or try to get away, or try to like any of that stuff. You don't know any of that stuff because they were essentially Soanguk's choices. And I think the ending made sense with that because you don't know if it will play out the same way. And I like that. I mean, I think a lot of people are not gonna like it, maybe, but I didn't mind that. And I think it made sense with this story. But that was part 1 and part 2 of the drama. 10 out of 10. Like, as I said, the story just blew my mind. And I was doing cartwheels in my head, trying to figure out how this was all going to be connected and how all of this would make sense at the end, especially if he turned out to be alive at the end. And again, when I said that earlier, like when I do that, that means I'm invested. When I do that, that means I care about these characters. When I do that, that means I want to try and figure something out before it actually happens. And I didn't figure it out whatsoever. Like all my theories were wrong, but it was amazing how these writers connected everything, and through all of these moments into this story that were like mind-blowing, and like you just weren't like unpredictable, and you just were not expecting it whatsoever. And it was fun. That made it fun. Granted, it's an extremely dark drama. Like, it's a dark drama. Like, you have violence, you have blood. I mean, Death shoots Soanguk every time he goes into a new life. Like, you see everything. It's so fun is probably not the best word, but it was fun in terms of trying to figure this out and trying to guess what's going to happen next, I guess. So, given the fact that this cast was stacked, it's stacked. There's like anybody who is everybody in this drama is in this drama. Like, it was so many cameos, and it worked off. The acting was amazing. The acting was so good. Like, both with the people who were in the drama the entire time or with the cameos. It was so good. Kim Jae-wook, so good. Like, I'm maybe a little biased with him, but the acting was phenomenal. The OST, Soanguk sang an OST for this. Like, I don't remember the last time. I know he has released music recently, but he sang an OST, and it's great. I love his OST. The OSTs were good. As I said, the story was amazing. The writers, props to the writers. Like, seriously, props to the writers. Props to the director. The production, oh my God, the budget for this drama was just insane. And it was so good. Just very, very good. But the message, though, there's so many things you could take from this drama. It's not just like the one message you get where like choose something else other than suicide and get the help you need, because you're going to be missed when you're gone, and you're going to be affecting a lot of people by doing it. Like, of course, that's the obvious message, obviously. And it's still a very important message. Like, please go get some help and talk to somebody if you are having suicidal thoughts or tendencies. But this is also a message we've seen before. Like, there's many stories that have this message of, as I said earlier, like, if you're gone, there's people still left behind and people who will be affected by it. And you might not realize that in the moment, but you will later on. And it's an important message. But I think also, like, there's just messages throughout. Like, death can come anytime. Live your life to the fullest. Any choice can be a difference to somebody else. Be kind to somebody. Like, there's countless messages you can get from this, and I love that. I loved that you had so many messages in this. Also, the message of, like, you only live once, or you only have one life to live. Like, it's just, there's so many good messages from this drama, and I don't think people, when they first entered into this drama, thought of that. Like, thought there'd be so many things to take away. I sure didn't. Like, I think I felt like there was the obvious one that I pointed out, but like, there's so many other messages that you could get from this. And given the so many different stories with all the cameos and stuff and their storylines, there's just so much you could take and analyze. And I feel like I'd be here forever. Especially the fact that I'd be like, the entire time I was watching this, I was trying to analyze what was going to happen if he came back alive. So it was just like, there's a lot to unpack and a lot to analyze with this. And I'm going to be really curious what other people say in other podcasts and other reviews of this, because there's just so much you could talk about with Death's Game, both on a story or like acting or writing, but also just like the existential part of it and life itself and death itself and all that stuff. It's sad that it had to come out at the time that it did, because we all know what happened late last year. I don't think the timing was very good, honestly, but it also had so many good messages and so many good stories, and it was such a good drama. Just 10 out of 10 drama. Like, really. I don't even, like, I have nothing bad to say about this drama. I usually do. Like, I guess the only bad thing I have to say is, like, why did they split it in two parts? Like, it made sense in terms of, like, a business standpoint. Like, they wanted people to subscribe to more than 1 month, but there was no need to split this into two parts. Really no need at all. At all. No need whatsoever. That's really the only, like, negative thing I have. It's nothing to do with the drama. It's to do with the choices of them releasing it. But yeah, I mean, I could talk all day about the messages and the story and how much the story affected me and made my mind go in a billion directions. Like, again, the fact that he came back as the person who got hit by the car just blew my mind. I did not think that would happen. I, like, did not even foresee that happening. I just couldn't believe it. It was just like, oh my god. Yeah, that's all I have to say about Death's Game. There's, unless you're gonna sit here for like 3.5 hours and listen to me kind of repeat what I say. That's all I have to say about Death's Game. It was a phenomenal drama. Like, if you have not watched this K-drama, please go and do it, especially if you have Amazon Prime. Like, it's, God, 2024 is starting out so well, and I'm so happy I did not wait and I watched this right away. I'm so happy I did that, because I think I would have been kicking myself that I didn't watch this sooner if I had waited. So I'm just so glad. If you want to continue the conversations about dramas that were started in this episode, you can find me on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter under the username NoSleep4Dramas. That is no sleep, the number 4 dramas, just like in the title of the podcast. This podcast is also an expansion of my blog, so you can visit my blog at www.NoSleep4Dramas.com, the number 4 dramas.com, and find multiple years of blog posts already available at your fingertips. All links are in the description of this episode. This has been an episode of the No Sleep for Dramas podcast, and I am your host, Caitlin. I will see you here next time, and I hope you get no sleep chasing the next episode just like me. Good night.